I want to turn over to an interview from KTVU Fox 2 out in San Francisco because Memorial Day is coming up. So what are we going to expect from those traveling? Well, KTVU talked with an expert.
Hello, everyone. Heather Holmes here with KTVU Fox 2 News in the San Francisco Bay Area. And joining me today is Sergio Avila with AAA. Thank you so much, Sergio, for being here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Not a problem.
Okay, we have a big Memorial Day weekend coming up, but this holiday is going to be unlike any Memorial Day that we've experienced.
Yeah, exactly. Typically I'd come on, in past years and talk about what traffic is going to look like because we did a big study on forecasts and what we expect for travel. All that kind of went by the wayside because of the economic data that we were using was just undermined by COVID-19. So this will be the first year in 20 that AAA will not be putting out a Memorial Day travel forecast. But what we have seen is that we're expecting more people to take road trips as, we see travel restrictions start to loosen around states. We expect more people are going to try to travel just around their homes and within the United States.
And talk a little bit about the data that points to that.
Yeah, one, still we believe there's a lot of people who are either afraid or hesitant to travel by air. Going to the airport still might make a lot of people nervous as well. Cruise ships are still not taken off. So we expect more people to travel in their own personal vehicle just because that's more comforting for folks.
Yeah. Explain, though, a little bit more about the decision not to forecast and not to make any predictions on travel.
Yeah, the data that we typically use is good, but again, as we said, because what happened with COVID-19 and as restrictions came into place, a lot of the data that had been collected was no longer relevant to the current reality, and so that was a lot of what went into our decision to forego the Memorial Day forecast, at least for this year.
Yeah. Do you think, though, that people will still be trying to find a way to get out and sort of celebrate Memorial Day weekend?
Of course, it's one of those days where even if you're working from home, you still might have a 3-day weekend. I know myself, I'm trying to figure out what to do. Maybe it's a cookout, but there's different options. Maybe it is a road trip to a park that's open. It just depends on what people feel comfortable with.
Okay, I want to talk about something else, which that is obviously AAA responds to a lot of calls for service. Talk about the types of calls that you're receiving, that you have been receiving throughout this outbreak.
Yeah, so a lot of people, as we just said, have been working from home, driving less traffic, obviously, on the roads. So we've seen a lot of our calls for service decline. But one thing that really stuck out for us, especially in the month of April and March, was that we were getting an increase in the number of people calling us for battery service. And if you think about it, it's something in your vehicle. If it's just sitting in your parking spot or in your driveway, it's not moving, the battery may not be charged or may lose that charge. So when you try to get in it, you run into the fact that your battery is not charged, you need a jump, or you need a replacement battery altogether. We've seen, compared to March and April of 2019, we've seen about 2,700 more calls for service on battery calls this year compared to last.
Okay, that is telling indeed. So what are some tips for car owners?
Really, get in your car, turn it on. AAA does recommend driving your vehicle, even if it's parked, for at least once a week. And that could be driving around the block or heading to the grocery store. The longer you drive, the better. It just helps keep all the parts moving in your vehicle. One thing that I've told a lot of people is maybe it's taking a trip to a grocery store that's a little further than the one you typically go to. That might add a little bit to your trip and keep your car running smoothly.
Yeah, and talk about, again, why that is so important for us to use the cars right now.
Yeah, again, as your car's sitting idle, your battery is sitting there, it's not being charged. So when you run your vehicle, it charges the battery on its own. So that's something that you want to make sure that you do as well. If your car's sitting in the driveway, you may consider, checking the tire pressure because if a car is sitting there and the tire pressure isn't where it needs to be, you could run into some trouble as far as your tires as well. So just these little things that you should be aware of and should be looking out for, especially if you're not driving that much right now.
Yeah, and Sergio, I know that you guys at AAA, you do a lot of forecasting, looking ahead. What are the indicators telling you about people's willingness to travel in a few months or maybe even next year?
We do expect once international travel restrictions are eased and lifted, we do expect there to be people who want to travel internationally. We've also noticed on AAA.com that bookings have been on the rise modestly since April. So we do expect travelers to get out there once things are safe and they feel more comfortable with moving around.
And when you mention those bookings, how far out in advance are those bookings?
I don't have that specific data as how far those are, but we have seen it increasing modestly.
Yeah, and what does that sort of tell you about the status of things?
It tells us that, people are willing to travel. They would still like to travel, but a lot of people are doing the right thing right now, and which is, staying home and obeying either stay-at-home orders and physical distancing as best they can. But as soon as, it's safe, we do expect people to begin traveling again.
Okay, so this is probably my last question for you, but again, kind of going back to Memorial Day weekend, any tips for those who are planning to hit the road? And maybe, again, it might be the first time that they're getting in their vehicle to drive a long distance.
Yeah, first you want to check right now to make sure your vehicle is in good shape for a road trip. And also, if you're going to be driving long distances, you may want to look at the restrictions and anything that may be in place for your destination. If you're leaving, let's say, California, or you're heading to another state, see what's been going on in that state, get familiar with what phase of reopening, if that's the thing in that state as well. Maybe if you're staying at a hotel, call the hotel, find out what kind of improved cleaning methods they're using for their rooms, just different things like that you may typically not do, but maybe something to consider while traveling this Memorial Day weekend.
Yep, a lot of things to consider now. All right, Sergio Avila with AAA, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Not a problem, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you.
And don't forget, whether you're just going to be stepping out and grilling in your backyard or maybe even taking a road trip, you can always get the latest COVID-19 news on coronavirusnow.com.